So I'm not going to do the usual good news, everyone, because this is not right under the topic of today. I pondered. I gave it a time just to be certain because the news, the usual allegations after a murder of that sort happens. It's usually the right trying to blame the left trying to blame the right. So before that settles after the first week, usually it's hard to tell who really committed the heinous act. It's very interesting. Um, I have to speak up. Me claiming to have been such a long advocate for freedom of speech that I can testify I am. I have been for a long time, decades. I just did it in more of a guerrilla style rather than open confrontation because that's pretty much the response that you get from totalitarians. If you studied anything, I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, it must be done, it shouldn't stop. It must be done tenfold now. We must have at least 10 new advocates for freedom of speech going around in universities. Not necessarily Christian. I recommend pagans do that and atheists do that. So religion can just go back to being irrelevant as it has been for at least 100 years. Because we evolved as a humanity, as a intelligent animal, intelligent species. We have evolved past that. It might have been necessary in the past when we lacked the technology to start properly handling the world around us. So we needed something else to hold on to our to the specs of our sanity, what we consider it to be sanity. But I'm not here to diss on religion. On the contrary, not to praise it either, as you have seen, but freedom of speech, something I take at heart, something I take very dearly. And it's foolish not to, even for the totalitarians, for them to realize that they are shooting themselves in the foot by doing that. They got free range. I understand why they are doing that with such a panache because they got like over 100 years of free range to just do that kind of stuff to anybody advocating for freedom of speech. For instance, do you know why they don't have a Gandhi in the Soviet Union or in China? Well, because they get shot. You understand? They are eliminated. They are either sent to the gulags, tortured, and all that. So there is no space in certain ideologies for freedom of speech, and it's about time we speak about it. There are certain ideologies that are designed not to allow freedom of speech, to demand freedom of speech to themselves, however, not to allow it back. Now, we were fortunate enough that we dealt with fascism and National Socialism. There are two of those totalitarian ideologies that advocate for eliminating freedom of speech. Like, if you don't know, there were laws in Germany that it was forbidden to make fun of Hitler, to tell jokes about Hitler. Anyone caught telling jokes about Hitler was to be shot in the spot. Um, I had a member of my family who was sent to concentration camp, not shot, but that was because they were concerned that my family would revolt in Denmark if he was shot. because he refused to make a pledge of allegiance to Hitler. And when the officers, he was an officer, when the officers asked him, "Why do you refuse?" And then he said, "I came here to fight, I didn't come here to kiss Hitler's ass." So technically, it was not a joke. So therefore, by a legal technicality, he was not killed, but he spent some years in concentration camps. So I believe it was Buchenwald, but I'm not certain. It was not Auschwitz, as everybody apparently went to. Uh, yeah, have you noticed? Everybody went to Auschwitz. There were several concentration camps, but everybody that we hear in the news went to Auschwitz for some odd reason. I don't know. But anyway, point being, independent of who he was or what he was, and I find it quite appalling that something I'm going to get into very very soon, because I just been in recent conversation with people of the left who are trying to stir up another riot. Actually, they want to make a racial riot in the U.S. to conflate the fact of that political assassination that happened. And I'm going also to consider some of the causes of why he was murdered. And it's not just about freedom of speech, there's more to it. Do you remember that Epstein list that people are really not forgetting? Well, 3 hours after Charlie Kirk, may he rest in peace, um, he is a hero of freedom of speech. Again, that has nothing to do with religion or ideology. It's about freedom of speech. That's how I see the matter. I couldn't care less what he did in the privacy of his house and his personal beliefs. Do you understand? Very clear that I couldn't care less. Point being, he died for freedom of speech. Once he died defending freedom of speech, I have to support him, I have to defend him, I have to promote him, I have to mention him, and I have to specify and try to figure out why was he shot. Was it really for freedom of speech? Uh, he will be defended by me for the simple matter that he was promoting freedom of speech. And we can say, look, I disagree with a lot of what he said. However, two things in his favor that I have seen. One, he lost debates gracefully. He lost debates as people should face debates. You have to respect your opponent's view. If your opponent can beat you in an argument, might not even be right or correct, but if your opponent's argument is stronger or more factual than yours, you shut up and you accept that there is nothing more you can say that might disprove it. And Mr. Kirk, I will call him Mr. Kirk, because now for me, he is a Mr. He's not just an average citizen, by the way. I respect the fact that he was raising a family, he was doing what he thought was right, which it is. Family is really, as a father myself, I believe I can relate. It's, as my personal experience, not everybody should be a father. Not everybody should start a family. Okay, don't get me wrong. Some people, if you don't feel like it, don't do it because it will take a lot of time and all. But if you are up to the task, it's one of the best experiences for you. It ceases to be like I was very much this person that I was sure I have seen everything. I kind of knew everything in a way. You understand what I mean? I knew I don't know. We can't know everything, but I hope you understand that. Things became very predictable, and suddenly, when there's a birth and there is that other person, and personally, it ceased to be about me and it started being about that person for the first time in history. Like, and I've been in the military, and in the military, even in the military, you have permission to, just fucking drop. You really don't have that when you have to take care of that young life. And I had a health condition back then that I wasn't aware of. It was dealt with, luckily, that made it tougher, but I pulled through in a very good way. I learned a lot by being a father. So the fact that he was a father, there is a silent bond on that sense. The fact that he passed away the way that he did in front of his children strikes another chord with me. It becomes personal to a certain level because not only he was defending something that my life for the last decades has I sacrificed friendships, I sacrificed relationships, I sacrificed everything except my kids for the last decades defending freedom of speech. So not only we had this bond about freedom of speech, although our fighting styles are different. Uh, I am more of a guerrilla kind of person. I like sudden strikes and then back into the woods. Um, it entices me. It excites me. He was more excited, more enticed by public debate, which is very important, and we need to do this in universities. We need to bring universities back to the basic principle of academia as it was created by the philosophers to be, where open debate between all sides was set for all to see. This needs to come back. I have been an academic. I was in academia. I had a very promising future in academia. I was offered opportunity in academia that very few might have because of my personal skills. And I left it because I was disappointed with academia, but this is not about me. Back to the topic. It's about this person, this family father, who passed away in a brutal manner in front of his children for several reasons, not just for freedom of speech. There were other possible reasons, but again, we'll never know probably, or not at least for the next 70 years or so. I just find it odd that 3 hours after he passed away, in such a brutal manner that the media was completely focused on the topic, um, they passed a bill in Congress blocking the release of the Epstein files. Probably can be reverted, but you understand the sleaziness of the moment. Some people really, oh, uh, I don't know. I'm not a diplomaed psychologist. I have some studies in psychology, of course. I had to for certain tasks I had to fulfill. However, it makes me wonder if we are really led by a bunch of narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths because that was such a sleaze move. But then, well, who else would defend not releasing such a file, right? I mean, unless they are really complete sleazeballs, correct? The scum of the earth kind of people. But or not, I don't know. Also, this thing of age of consent. Oof. It varies from country to country. It's ridiculous. It's arbitrary. If it was something more natural, but it's not. It's arbitrary and probably intended to create blackmail so they can blackmail people. Oh yeah, you thought she was that, and oh, but she wasn't. You see, she was. So therefore, despite being consensual, statutory rape. So you better do what we tell you. But again, a different topic. But since it was inserted in the matter, I'm mentioning that as a possibility. But it was really the freedom of speech matter because I've seen in Denmark, I was about to join a movement in Denmark, I think a decade ago, a couple of decades ago, and I was going to the meeting, but then they kind of spared the area because a maniac sprayed rifle shots, like he shot several times where the meeting or about the people advocating or uniting to create a force for freedom of speech, they were like sprayed with bullets. The whole place that they were meeting and talking about that I was going towards was sprayed by bullets. So I might have survived something, and hence I decided that I had to advocate for freedom of speech in a more of a guerrilla style because there were some very weird people watching. Totalitarians probably. Makes me think psychopathy, right? Like because who would be against freedom of speech? I can't understand that. I can't. I can't. It's impossible. Who would have such an issue that you shouldn't tell the truth? You shouldn't find out, figure out what is best for all of us, and that means all of us, especially even the people in power, for them as well. Because if they have happy people, if they have people satisfied with their lives, those people are not going to turn him down. As it is right now, things are so bad that they are managing to bring back Christian fundamentalism. Do you have any idea of how crazy it is? Maybe that's the intention, because that has been promoted kind of artificially, right? They use that psychologist, what's his name? Like the guy has worked in the UN, so he's definitely like a trained dog for that group of group of interest. I don't believe in the groups, that's bullshit. But there are interests. There is money being fought for. Do you understand? So of course. So he's a trained dog by a certain interest, right? Can we agree to that? What he became very popular suddenly. He started being promoted, and what really called my attention is that the people who could really really tear him down because they could. Um, they were really easy on him, and I thought it was very strange that they were going easy on him, and they invited him to interviews. They don't invite their political enemies to interviews. They never do that. But they invited him to several political interviews where they would hear him, what he had to say. What is, even though some of them were very antagonistic, they would go to the bitter end. They would let him speak, which I haven't seen. So the pattern was broken there for a reason. And once you recognize patterns, it's kind of strange until suddenly he released all his Christian faith, and that was completely a 180-degree U-turn. There he suddenly blasted out of, after he had nervous breakdowns. Now it could be two reasons. Again, I can't read minds, so you have to figure based in patterns, right? Patterns of behavior in that case. One, usually drug addicts, which he is, probably still, have, once they try to drop the habit, they become very religious. That could have been it, correct? And another one is just very strange. Suddenly he started blasting out when he was very secular. What made him popular actually was the fact that he was very impartial about religious perspective, and he never really gave it away. He kept it to himself, which allowed them to focus in what he was telling instead of, personal attacks about his personal beliefs, because any religious in debate becomes very easy to defeat once you start using the flaws of their religion against them. Main reason why Mr. Kirk, may he rest in peace, was constantly beaten in argument, because all the other part, especially young academics who know how to study, who know how to present a case, all they needed to do was just remember some religious sentences to throw back at Mr. Kirk, may he rest in peace, whenever he was in debate. And again, what gained my respect about him was his attitude when he was proven wrong. He would keep quiet. He would keep quiet. He would respect the other person in debate. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you happen to believe in. But if you are going to advocate for free speech, you should do that. Sometimes I myself have a hard time having to deal with certain replies, but they're usually very stupid and aggressive. I deal mostly with the internet. I spread free speech throughout the internet. I have done it. Now I'm considering other venues, because I believe I reached a certain limit in the internet. My message there is sent. The normies I was supposed to influence have been influenced. The cat is out of the bag in the general sense, especially with the recent events. So I can just move on, try something new, try something else. I'm not sure. The message was sent, and now with this political assassination, because that's basically what it was. Um, Half of my work is done, so I can just move on. People, the normies, they have seen now. Uh, they are stepping up their own game. I don't need to do that anymore. But it saddens me what happened to his family. I'm really concerned about his little girls and boy. It is concerning because they shouldn't they shouldn't have to see this, and they saw it. And that's not cool, man. That's not cool at all. That we are dealing with people that lack absolute empathy. Maybe because they managed to get away with it for over 100 years. Because for them, usually, because the information was very slow back then, so before the information really came out, they already had a whole narrative, a whole propaganda machinery already set in motion to defend their views and perspectives. So they could get away with murder. Nowadays it's very hard. I also find odd that there seems to be dozens of German politicians that are currently being murdered in Germany, and there are also Mexican politicians in opposition to the current Mexican regime who are also being murdered. And I find it very strange, and I'm not sure if it is related. I haven't looked into it. Maybe I never will. Um, so I find it just very strange that nobody's commenting on those. Now, about things I didn't, but again, that was changing, so fair enough. That was the second reason. So not only he kept his quiet, two things. Remember, two things I respect. He earned my respect. One, he kept quiet. The second, he was changing his points of view. He was changing his opinion. Because at first he struck me as very dishonest, and he was dishonest as I perceived it because he was trying to take the whole of Western civilization, of Western cultural values, freedom of speech, empathy, and fraternity and liberty, right? And he was trying to make it um, state of Colombia. For those who do not know, many Americans don't probably. Americans should be called Colombians, not really Americans. So pretense, once again. But he was trying to take the whole cultural value that was created in Europe and make it America only. Only in America we have, like I saw a recent video from someone I watch, a popular YouTuber, and he ended the video with one of Kirk's footage saying, only in America we have freedom of speech, which is nonsense. This is absolute garbage. I have to say it's garbage because it is. Because, oh, it's getting dark. There. Not dark anymore. There's a light in the dark. I'm the light in the dark. Oh, I have to be careful. Religious people say, oh, he's the light. Oh, my God. That's what. This is why religion has to go. Okay? There's no place for that. Superstition. But he was changing his perspective. But he struck me as this typical eehole, like ignorant person, religious in the sense he never did theology as I did. Um, so he never studied to that level of knowledge about his own religion. So kind of ignorant, right? Like he, what, divinity school? Technically not the same, right? As theology proper. So he had vague knowledge of his own religion, because in the U.S. you can do the religion of the cuckoo, and everybody's going to worship a cuckoo, and you don't need to have any feasibility, which is kind of cool, but at the same time is troublesome because every now and then in the U.S. we have those death cults and things you have to deal with. What is that? Uh, so there is this cuckoo religion thingy. What the fuck? What is it? Oh, okay. How did I stop that? There's a weird thing here in the screen. So those things I had a huge issue with. This is why I really didn't pay much attention. Didn't bother watching too much because I knew what the tone was going to be, and I also knew that outside of the U.S., where people actually know stuff, he was going to be debunked so hard that it would be a miracle if he managed to crawl from a table after that. Um, by the things he was saying, that it's only in the US that you have freedom of speech. Look, if any American to this day still believes that, I have to remind you that, and feel free to check, right? If you want to check it in a funny way, check the video YAFM, like YAAFM, 12 Muslims, right? Like they show the tidbits that during the whole cartoon scandals, where the American administration lambasted the Danish government for standing by the principle of freedom of speech. So the U.S. haven't been pro freedom of speech for decades. Okay, actually, there are several laws that Americans probably don't even know about that I remember since the 90s. When, because of the war in Iraq, that's when it started. They were censoring, like, oh, they said, like, that it's on record that the American Pentagon had passed measures that ensured allowed them to make false statements in the media. So from since the 90s, the American media haven't been reliable because the Pentagon can just spread fake news. They allowed because of the war in Iraq, and I bet, I can be wrong, but then prove me wrong, that they haven't changed that to this day, right? That they can just spread false information because anyone can do it provided they are in the good graces of the state there. So you haven't really had freedom of speech in a long time in the US, or at least advocated for it. He was one of the few, Crowder being the other one, that would bring debate back to the universities instead of absolute compliance. Reason that I left my university, my alma mater. Right? I was very disappointed for what I've seen and what they tried to do to me. I can't stand it. I said, listen, I don't need this. And proof is in the pudding. 1 year after, 1 year straight, like sharp, I was being invited to expose my ideas in the Museum of Contemporary Art of Paris back in 2007. While my alma mater was going through a huge scandal. Uh, they were being sued for, amongst other things, not intentionally not passing students because they were not affiliated to either an ideological faction or a religious one. Yes, that was what was going on. That was why I left academia, was disgusted with what I've seen. such bright minds, such knowledge. I love academia. You can get so much information to anything you want to do, and they should help you with that. But the bickering between ideological factions and religious factions, I am making an educated guess that there is a lot of material, evidence, papers, knowledge that is being thrown out of the window on a daily basis because of those ideologues and religious lunatics. Not to call them flat out ignorant Neanderthals, that ideological people and religious people kind of force upon us in academia. Let them in not because they really have skills, but because they belong to a certain belief, may it be ideological or religious. And I got sick and tired of having to talk with morons, with absolute morons in positions of power. So, who could do anything to you if they wanted? Because it suddenly becomes like a prison mindset. You have to you have you have to belong to a certain group of idiots, and that's not how I do things. Anybody who knows anything about my life knows this. That's not how I ever done anything. So yeah, so I had to leave. 1 year after I was exposing my ideas, I've been invited to expose my ideas in the Museum of Contemporary Art of Paris, while one of them at least, while my alma mater was suffering legal lawsuits because of a massive scandal, because finally it came out in the open. And you see, sometimes you don't need to do anything but leave. So, and take care of what you can conclude, you can conclude logically, empirically, based in facts, that's what you want to do. You don't need, if you have a bright mind, you don't need academia, especially today's academia. Academia needs you. And that's the thing many people forget. Well, the mediocre, they don't even know that. But the capable forget. They need you. And that's the thing that most of the people there didn't seem to know. They seem to believe, not conclude, believe that they needed this paper from academia. No, you don't. When you're correct in your observations, you don't need that paper. You just need to keep going. Anyway, which I did, and it paid off. So actually, I got no money, but it paid off in another level. It paid off that I was proven correct in my conclusions. So when I see a guy like Mr. Kirk, may he rest in peace, willing to shut up when he's wrong, which he was many times, and to evolve in his thinking. He was very radical, or not radical, but stubborn in certain beliefs that later on he actually became antagonistic towards. He was trying to bring the debate to the people that he was just at start blindly following, and now he was raising questions because of the proper debates that he started. And I respect that. I respect when you can learn and you can evolve and you can change your mind. And it saddens me incredibly so. I wonder if it was even the religious who killed him, since he was changing his points of view about religion, actually. It saddens me that he went so early in his life, that he went at all, but he went so early in his life, because it would have been interesting to see him 10, 20 years from what was his current position that already had changed since he started the debates, the public debates. It would have been really interesting. It would have been very helpful to Americans because he was very pro-American and all that. And he could have opened, he was starting to see. I saw him praising the British when he was where I think Oxford, and he was praising them for being the seat, or like that the Americans inherited it from the British. So that position alone was diametrically the opposite from when he started the debates. And I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if you notice, I'm very sick right now, so bear with me, okay? Yeah, it doesn't look like I'm really sick, but you have no idea. It's just I'm strong as a fucking bull. What can I say? But anyway, except when I get sick, then I get all weak. Uh, Men are weird, aren't we? Um, Women, they can just take a couple of pills. They're good to go when they're sick. We almost die. But I'm forced to respect the guy. He did a lot for freedom of speech, and unfortunately, this happened. But because this happened, I have reason to conclude that many people are seeing have realized how in danger they actually are, because we have those lunatics running around who believe that they can just get away with murder. And you saw how many people were praising and dancing, and many of them, because right now they don't understand why they're getting fired. They're saying, "Oh, freedom of speech, hey," like mocking, right? Because they don't believe in freedom of speech to begin with, right? It's only right when they do it, but they don't really believe that everybody should, right? Because this is what they've proven again and again for the last 3 decades. Cancel culture, hello. Um, they're trying to mock because they don't believe in it to begin with, right? And remember, those were the same people who were demanding you used masks and you took the jabs, and they were ratting in the neighbors if they didn't do it. Um, they don't bother ratting to the government. That's their shtick. They love it. They love the little teeny tiny bit of power that they can feel, right? Because they're so insignificant as people that this must make their day when they can see through the window that the neighbor has to justify something to the authorities because they call them. But anyway, rats. I hate snitches. If there's one thing, I hate snitches more than I don't know what. Snitches are something I really despise. I despise it with a passion, right? But anyway, I'm digressing. But he was changing his mind, and it would have been interesting to see where he would go, because he was starting to confront his previous idols, and that's always good. Like, I studied a bit publicity as well, and there's something in publicity that is called killing your darlings, and that's a process that happens during brainstorming, where you have that idea that is so good in your head, like that's the perfect slogan or campaign or whatever, right? But then during the brainstorm process, you lay all your ideas and you leave it to see what the others are going to say about it, and then they start hacking it down, right? A similar thing in academia that is called cross examination, right? Like they start mocking it, they start making fun of the such a great idea, and sometimes when it leaves your mouth, you realize as it is leaving your mouth how ridiculous it actually sounds. So that's the process that in publicity they call killing your darlings. So because that's darling idea, right? A perfect idea, and you suddenly realize, oh my God, this is horrible, right? So you kill your darling in that way, and he was killing his darlings in that way, his religious darlings, right? Because of the debates, because he was shown a lot of Christian or religious hypocrisy, right? That were passages in that book that he worshipped, that basically were the complete opposite of anything he ever believed in, right? But he didn't know because he didn't study theology proper. He had beliefs, right? He was in a church every Sunday, so he must be a good Christian. But anyway, I'm not laughing at him specifically, but I'm laughing at this mindset, right? That many Christians have, many religious people have, and ideologically driven people too. So they're very similar in so many ways. I think ideologically people are a bit more narrow minded, actually. But that's for another topic. Thing is, I respect what Mr. Kirk did. I think I'll call him Captain Kirk from now on. Captain Kirk. Yes, that's a good name for him. He will be remembered as Captain Kirk, the first Captain Kirk in my book, who fought for freedom of speech. I will always respect, I will always defend those who defend freedom of speech. And it saddens me that there are people that do not. I cannot even understand why, unless they are evil. But there might be some other reasons. Enlighten me. Tell me why. I would like to know. I'm curious. I'm willing to be proven wrong. Maybe one day I become against freedom of speech if they can show me that the alternative, what freedom of speech leads to is so gruesome that, which is not, it has catapulted any society. Like Greece, this Greece that we idealize, that we, kind of, oh, they fought the Persians and they beat her. They were so cool. Look at that art. Look at that. You know how long it was that this freedom in Greece, that wasn't even called Greece, it was called like the Hellenic city states. There was no Greece, okay? Not as we know today. Those were Hellenic city states. Uh, and each one of them had a very different constitution and society. So, but you know how long that development lasted? 50 years. 50 years. In 50 years, that society, that would be two, three generations top, that society catapulted itself to absolute, you know, undying, like eternal participation in the world. Their art, that was initially a copycat of Egyptian art, became the most perfect, until the Romans came along, the most perfect forms of art that imitated human nature to a degree that you have no idea. Uh, the columns, for instance, they were not fully straight, if you don't know that. And everything was based in organic uh, measurement systems. But again, I digress. Point being, in 50 years, they went from being copycat of other cultures to becoming heading civilization starter pack of independent thinking and entrepreneurship and so many other things, and thought and theaters and arts and development and everything that led the entire continent, just because they had around, give or take, 50 years of freedom from tyrants and and suppression from other groups and all that. They were like people who were, they had a free market, yeah, for around 50 years before they were taken over by, I believe, a tyrant, and then things came gradually back to a halt. But then the damage was done, and history was never the same thanks to those 50 years of absolute independence in that city state. So, talking about Athens. And that's interesting. That makes you think, right? In 50 years, they kick-started philosophy. Although they tried to stop, the religious tried to stop philosophers, right? Because philosophers saw religion for what it was and pointed it out. Remember, kids, religion killed philosophy, okay? Um, but Kirk, he was trying to figure things out. I have reason to conclude that his mind seemed to be in the right place because he was consistent with what he believed to be right. And that I respect, especially because it has to do with freedom of speech, which is always an intelligent choice. If you happen to be intelligent, please embrace freedom of speech. And yes, it's really hard sometimes, really hard. Sometimes I get really upset because some people are so stupid. But you know what I do? I leave them to their own until they realize I did my share. I shared what I know to be more consistent. If they are not capable or willing to process that information, that's not on me. I'm not going to force it upon them. So please don't force it upon me. And I had several surprises along the way. Groups that I thought would be radical were actually very open minded. Groups that I believed were open minded, they became very radical. They can't basically have a rational dialogue whenever push comes to shove. For some groups of Uh, a group. That's a wrong definition. For some ideologies, my father used to use the word groups. I always had an issue with that. Because groups kind of loose, can be anything. Um, Certain ideologies and religions, right? They just try to insult you. It's all about optics. It's not about being consistent. It's about sophistry. And philosophy was created to combat sophistry. Do not confuse sophistry with Sufism. Those are two very different things. By the way, I love Sufism. I don't like sophism. Very, very different, right? Sophism or sophistry are like professional politicians or academics, as we know today, who are paid to lie. Like they're very good at using words, so they smith sentences and phrases that promote causes not because they are correct or their best solution, but because of their own petty interests, or worse, somebody pay them to promote wrong ideas. So philosophy was born to combat that. If you disagree, you can have a discussion with my former philosophy professor at the Royal University of Copenhagen. I challenge you to go and talk with my professors of philosophy because that's what they taught me. So if I'm inconsistent, go shout at them about why do you believe I would be incorrect in stating that. That's what they taught me. So if I'm wrong, they are wrong. So go talk with them. Uh, Again, there were great minds in academia. There still are, but they don't have a voice in current academia. They don't. They are silenced, and if they try to speak up, their life is made miserable. So they have to comply to a lot of things they don't agree with. That for me is pretty bad. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this guy because he died fighting for something I believe in. I respect and I will cherish, even if I disagree with some of his ideas. But again, as I said, he was changing his mind as he was progressing on the realms of philosophical debate, of academic debate, proper as it should be done, where you respect and you accept when you are proven wrong, which he did very often, gracefully. He stood there like a man for those of poor understanding. He took it like a man. He fought as a man should. He did many right things in his life. Embracing freedom of speech was one of them. Raising a family when that's what you want. Some people are unfit to be parents. So for those people, I recommend you not to be a parent. But the majority of people should have children. It does improve their lives. And he did what he thought was right. And when he was proven wrong, he embraced it with grace. He might have started as a euphemist. He might even have been a bit dishonest or sneaky by trying to take credit for the whole of European civilization to try to make it American. But even that, I heard him admit to Europeans that he was debating that he admired them because they came with those concepts. So, credit to where credit is due. He lived like a man, he died like a man, he lived like a brave, he died like a brave. Although his religion is for pussies, but you get my point. Um, I have to try to lighten it up, although it's technically impossible because I grieve for his family. But so I won't get mad to see a good man trying to do the right thing in the best way that he could die such a coward way of killing someone in front of his children. That is so wrong. And if you celebrate him dying in such a way just because you disagree with his personal beliefs that he was trying to be corrected on, he allowed himself, he put himself out there to be corrected if he was wrong. If you can't understand that basic principle of humanity, if you believe that you can get away with promoting violence to good people, there is something wrong with you. There is. You should take therapy because that's not all right. You or your religion or your ideology have driven you to become inhumane because empathy is a trait of human beings, of mentally healthy, physically healthy human beings. Without empathy, we can't have a proper society. That's what made us survive for so long because we had acquired that trait. So we can step back and feel the pains others have so we don't have to endure the same pain by helping them. By doing that, our society thrived. And we need to learn from that. We need to bring it back. Because certain ideologies and certain religions are designed to obliterate that. They want absolute submission. And you shouldn't accept that because you don't need that. They need you. You don't need them. You're good on your own. Believe in yourself. Like Captain Kirk did. Mr. Kirk. Indeed. He died like a brave. If one day I can help his family in any way, I will. Because those are good people. It doesn't matter that they might have some beliefs that are, because he passed away so early, he couldn't pass the knowledge to his family that you know, that there are better options, possibilities, alternatives to certain things that he hadn't yet figured out. So he couldn't pass that knowledge to his family. They might radicalize because of what happened to him. I do not blame them if they do. I understand. It's unforgivable what was done to that man in such a coward manner when he was there in the open, willing to have conversation, regardless of his religious position. This is why I recommend pagans do that. Atheists do that. Go out there, pick up his baton and keep running with it, regardless of religion. or no religion or whatever, you get the point of ideology. Do not admit that freedom of speech dies out. Because freedom of speech is the canary in the mine of life, of humanity. If that dies, a lot of bad things happen to everyone, especially the totalitarians, actually. They are not getting away with it scot free, they never do. So many of them tend to have horrible deaths, right? So even if he was wrong in certain things, he was learning. He started a journey. It's not a destination just by going out there. That's not a destination. That's the beginning of the journey. He was going through a journey and he was learning and he was admitting when he was wrong. He was starting to admit. Uh, oh, so much I want to say, but it might sound like I'm repeating, but I'm actually getting into detail. So I'll stop here. It's already past 1 hour. But what a horrible thing that happened. But at the same time, and I hope people understand me when I say, what a good thing that it happened. Because a lot of people saw the danger, the other side, the opposition, how they are. They saw them with no mask. And unfortunately, we still live in a world where people need to see things, to believe things. That was, of course, ironically meant. And what they saw made them realize. And if it happens again and it goes public, people will start doing things against totalitarians. So they made a bad move. But too early to tell, right? I feel sorry for his family. It mustn't be easy. I feel like crying for thinking what his children are going through. They are never going to see their dad again. Think about that.